Feel Good Breakfast Show.
Welcome back. You're live with Expresso. Another very big thank you to Francois van Kook in Frinde, of course, performing throughout this morning ahead of their unbelievable concert at Grand West Casino. We've got all of those details on our website. But now let's turn our attention to those beautiful giggling voices. And I think a lot of parents out there may be grappling with this right now. If you're wondering if your little one is on track with their feeding milestones, fear not. You are definitely not alone. I've gone through this myself. Registered speech and feeding therapist Sammy Hammond now helps us figure out the feeding red flags to look out for and what parents can do to assist the development of those feeding skills. Sammy, so awesome to see you. I think we live in the same hood. We keep walking past each other. Yeah. This is such an interesting kind of lane to get into because everyone kind of measures their success, if we can even call it that, against other parents, but every child is completely different. But there are some milestones you kind of want to be hitting at the same time. And I think, you know, obviously getting to a point where your child can feed themselves successfully and be comfortable in that space is a very important one of those milestones. What are those skills that babies need to develop? What are the basic skills that you're wanting to get to foster in your child so that they can get to a point where they can kind of feed and essentially fend for themselves?
Yeah, so I think that what you mentioned is very important. I think that parents need to remember that each child is different and milestones are only a guideline.
Completely.
But feeding is a very, very complicated task, and I think we forget about that. And so our basic feeding milestones is, 0 to 4 months, your primary source of food is either from breastfeeding or from bottle feeding, but your milk. And then we say between 4 and 6 months, depending on the cues that your child is showing you, you can start introducing solids. And so that's where you start with your purees and your softer foods. And then from there, you start at around 10 months, you can start doing your softer cubes of foods. And then we normally say from about a year, we're looking at your more table foods, like what you and I eat. But it's quite important just to follow your baby's cues and go with what they're showing you. Also, your cup feeding can be introduced when you start your solids, depending on your baby.
With spectacular results as well.
Yep.
I love that. I kind of knew with Jack, because he would just watch me eat like, I was like, I'm guessing it's time for solids. But what are some of those big cues that you know, okay, maybe it's time to shift gears?
Yeah, so we look at mouthing. That starts early. So your child will start putting things into their mouth. That shows that they're starting to desensitize that oral area. Babies are born with quite a hyperactive gag reflex, and it's a protective mechanism. So once they start mouthing, yeah, and then it becomes behavioral as well when they start.
Especially when your parent starts reinforcing it like cat and
yeah,
eye,
those green veggies, yeah. And so then they start mouthing things. They start showing interest in your food. Start maybe taking from your plate at the table, putting things. Different types of food into their mouth. It's a lot about showing interest in feeding and what other people around them are eating. And then also if their oral motor skills are ready. So that's how we look at it as a progression. So that's why they start off with purees, because that's what they can handle in the beginning. And then we start moving towards more chewy things, harder things. And so that's where it is. It's cue-based feeding. It's what your child is showing you at that time.
And it's a fun process to go through as well, and it's trial and error. Don't ever think that one thing's going to work and one thing's not. You just keep trying until you hit that balance, and we are taking your calls. If you've got any questions for Sammy, 021-430-9881. From a parent's perspective, and we'll get into these, I think, at greater depth, but how can we, as a parent, adopt the right mindset to develop these skills, do you think?
So I think it's a journey, and so that's what parents need to remember. You know, again, you are following your child's cues, and so what's important is to provide them with different opportunities to enhance these oral sensory skills. And through doing that, you are giving them access to a variety of different types of foods and different types of textures, but that are obviously age appropriate. You don't want to give a 4-month-old a carrot stick because they do not have the oral motor skills.
Just don't have the tools, man. Just don't have the tools. Sammy, thank you so much. We're going to keep those lines open. 021 430 9881. If you've got any questions relating to your child and developing those feeding skills, maybe just for yourself, never mind your child. If you're battling with getting that little one to eat the right things, give us a shout. We've got some great advice.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Follow that beautiful, happy sound all the way to your TV. You're live with Expresso. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're worried about your baby's feeding, eating habits, and are they developing, are they reaching those milestones, have no fear. We are here with some great advice, and we'd love to take your calls. If you've got any questions, 021 430 9881, and we've got a caller on the line right now. Sharon, all the way from Jersey. Sharon, how are you this morning?
Hi, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks. Sharon, Sammy and I are sitting here. Sammy, more to take your question and give her advice. What's your question or your comment this morning?
I have a 9-month-old baby, and he doesn't want to eat anything I give him, be it from baby food, porridge, and steak.
Okay, so just to recap, you've got a 9-month-old baby.
So what must I do?
Okay, so 9-month-old baby who's not wanting to eat anything that you're giving. So are you still on the bottle or still on milk?
I'm breastfeeding.
Breastfeeding. 9 months, we should have then progressed into some form of solid. What advice do you have for Sharon?
My advice would be, because he's 9 months, you can start seeing, maybe it's a textural thing, maybe he doesn't like a puree. And to start offering him maybe some small pieces of really soft food, such as veg. I wouldn't go as far as doing pieces of meat or anything like that just yet, but something that's soft that if he does happen to swallow it, it's not a choking hazard per se. But I'd say offer him a variety of things. Some children skip a certain texture. It's not by the book. So I would say, put it out there, let him have a taste of yours. If he's going to have a lick of your spoon, he's getting his main form of nutrition now from breast milk, which is perfect. So from a nutritional side, his needs are being met. It's just important to now expose him to different forms of food.
At what point, and stay on the line, Sharon, at what point should you be moving to a more solid-based diet? 9 months, we know that you can still get most of the nutrients that you need from the milk, especially breastfeeding. When does it become a worry that they're not moving onto solids or more solid state food? So
I would say about, purees, you want to be, if you're going to do purees, it's by about 10 months. And then we're looking at table food by around 15, 16 months. Whatever texture that may be, we want to have, start weaning off the milk from about 15, 16 months.
Sharon, what's your little one's name?
My little one's name is Ahmed.
Well, you are still early days, so don't stress too much. I think, as Sammy says, try as much variety as you possibly can, but at least know that he's still getting a lot of the vital nutrients that he needs. But perseverance, hun, perseverance. Just keep trying, keep at it, and know that there are a lot of parents that can relate to you. But thank you so much for the question.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Sharon, there from Johannesburg. I think one element that we certainly keep reconnecting with is the social element. If they see you doing it, we know those kind of, motor, those neurons that kick in, mirror neurons, we call them, that's a big part of it. But can it be a social experience as much as a kind of a physical eating experience?
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that your whole eating behavior, your whole eating experience starts from birth, actually. We have huge communication benefits that occur during the feeding process. And if we think about meal times for us, they're huge social things.
Yeah.
We go, we meet friends, we chat, you catch up. And it's the same for children. That's where they learn. They're watching you, they're watching their siblings, their friends at creche, at school. That's why we have meal times. And there's other things like your language skills, your speech skills, your bonding that goes on between you and your child during feeding times. And so that's why it's such an important time. That's why when I work with parents, I say, put your phones away, focus on your child. It's a special time to connect together, and it's where they learn, and it must be a pleasant experience.
Yep, and you can keep the phone out to take a photo if necessary, or two. And I would recommend one of the most spectacular physical forces in nature. You combine a toddler, a pot of yogurt, and 0.2 seconds. Just see what can happen. But hopefully that's given you some practical advice on helping your child to reach those feeding milestones.